The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Thank you for attending today's APQC orientation. We'll get started in just a few minutes, but first I wanted to go over a couple housekeeping items. You have the option to listen to the presentation today through either your computer speakers or dial-in conference line. All phone lines are muted. Please submit your questions using the Q&A tool located on the right side of your screen. You can enter your questions at any time and we will get to them at the end of the presentation. We are recording today's presentation, and you'll receive a copy of both the recording and the slides within just a few business days. After the presentation, there will be a short survey for you to provide feedback on today's webinar. We encourage you to take that survey. Now I'd like to turn the presentation over to APQC's Membership Success Manager, Brandy Wiley. Thank you so much, Brandy.
Oh, thanks, Caitlin. Let me first just confirm. Caitlin, are you seeing my screen? I'm on the speaker screen right now. I just want to make sure before we get started that we're not having any audio or visual challenges.
I can see you.
Okay, perfect. So yeah, as Caitlin had mentioned, my name is Brandy Wiley. I'm one of the member success managers here at APQC. And just to set a quick agenda, what I'll be doing is first, I'll just start with just a little bit of background about APQC and who we are as an organization and why we exist. I'll also go into some of the benefits that APQC member organizations receive, but I will spend the majority of time going into the type of research that we do and how organizations can utilize APQC. So with that, I'll just kind of go ahead and get started. So in case you're not familiar with APQC, I'll just give a little bit of background. We are a member-based nonprofit organization that is known as an authority in benchmarking, best practices, process and performance improvement, and knowledge management. We serve as a neutral third party that organizations can utilize to connect them both with quantitative performance metrics and qualitative actionable best practices that have proven to allow organizations to perform more efficiently and stand out amongst their peers. Why we exist, we were started in the early 70s with a mission to research effective methods of improvement, broadly disseminate those findings, and connect organizations to knowledge and tools that will help them perform as efficiently as possible. At the bottom of the screen, you will see our core values, which are made up of finding and delivering trustworthy answers, lasting solutions, not quick fixes, approaching the research that we do with fearless creativity around structured innovation, individual contribution for collective achievement, and then finally, continual learning, sharing, and growth. So as a benchmarking and best practice research organization, I'll kind of start by focusing on the qualitative best practices side and giving you a little bit of idea around where we get all of this research. So we focus our research, as you can see here, our qualitative research, as you can see here, in 5 major areas. One, overall process and performance management research, or process and performance improvement research, that's focused on identifying tools, techniques, and practices that have proven to help organizations improve business agility and operational performance. Knowledge management, which is one of our core competencies. We have very deep roots in the area of knowledge management and have for over 25 years. We do remain a leading source for innovative thinking and the most up-to-date knowledge management research. And then also, of course, not to be outshined by the process and performance management and knowledge management research that we do. We also focus on financial management, human capital management, and supply chain management. So on the qualitative side of the research that we do, I'll just kind of go through the process and where we get all of this research. So we have a research services team that focuses on each of these 5 core research areas. And they're constantly going out and speaking with people in the business community and getting a feel for what organizations are struggling with, what they're working on, what they're challenged with, what are some of their top challenges. And once we hear common themes or topics, we'll scope a benchmarking study where our research services team identify organizations that have really innovative practices in this area or standing out amongst their peers, or just overall performing more efficiently. And they'll connect with these organizations directly and really just do a deep dive into what's making them successful. What practices do they have in place? What have they implemented? Perhaps even what hasn't worked, but ultimately, what are their story? What have they put in place that's allowing them to stand out amongst their peers, perform more efficiently, or just be successful in this area? And they'll take what they've learned and create content that goes into our resource library for our members to access. And this is in various forms. It may be in some really in-depth case studies that looks at an organization and, again, pulls out and shares their practices in a particular area, or some high-level infographics that may be a little bit more easy to digest. We've been doing some podcasts recently. So yeah, various forms, this qualitative research goes into our resource library, utilizing that philosophy of why reinvent the wheel. If something is working for other organizations and has proven successful, let's learn from them and, of course, see where that may get us. So APQC's online, as an APQC member, you are part of a worldwide network of organizations across a large variety of industries. Every employee within the organization has the ability to access our best practice research, performance assessments, and metrics. If you haven't done so already, as a member, you can go onto apqc.org and create your own unique profile. One thing I would suggest is registering with your work email address. This is how we recognize members from non-members. And even if your organization is not an APQC member, you can still register for the site and utilize our open source documents. So the member resources. One is you do get access to the resource library. This is our research that covers over 70 process areas. Again, you'll have access to white papers, case studies, all of this qualitative best practice information, as well as some of the quantitative, benchmarks and metrics that I'll go over in just one second. And we'll get into all of these in a little more detail as we get onto the site. The process classification framework, I do want to spend a little time on this because all of our work is organized by the framework. It is an open source document, and it continues year after year to be one of our most frequently downloaded content items. Organizations all over the world use our framework to help them in their process, whether it's process mapping, content management, documentation. But basically, the process classification framework is a numerical taxonomy of what work gets done within an organization. It starts at a high-level process category, and it's broken down to a process group, a process, and then down to the activity level. The process classification framework itself is a look at what work gets done within an organization. It's not intended to tell organizations how to work. It does follow the MICE, mutually exclusive, collectively exhaustive. No, sorry, mutually exhaustive, collectively exclusive, the MICE framework or ideology. But anyway, organizations will use this as a backbone to their more detailed process mapping activities, process governance structure, process flows. And APQC has research around how organizations are doing this, how they're utilizing the framework to really get real work done within their organization. So I'll give you a quick example. Elevations Credit Union, back in 2008, they had a newly hired CEO that really sought out how they can make the organization more efficient. At the time, they had no structured business models, and the way knowledge was shared and problems were solved was by employees going from desk to desk, which I'm sure you can all agree that can create a lot of rework. So he elicited the help of Carla Wolf, one of their senior business analysts, and they went on a 5-year process journey to address the lack of standardization or the lack of standardized processes, embed a process-oriented culture within the organization, and really create a governance structure to ensure success. They decided to utilize the process classification framework to do this. So the first year, they were really focused on developing an initial enterprise process map, again, tied to and based on the process classification framework. The second year, they were able to establish consistency of these processes and these process maps across the organization. The third year was really focused on connecting the dots. And then the fourth year, they were able to use the process improvement transparency and really engage the entire organization and get them excited about this process journey. And then the fifth year was really focused on making sure all of this work that they've just done the past 5 years really stuck. The payoff for this work that they did, they were able to map 261 processes that are all linked to the process classification framework and documented down to desk level procedures. The PCF is now the language that everyone speaks within the organization. Carla has said that the process classification framework saved them time in doing all of this because it provided an overarching architecture to align, organize, and integrate their processes. Now they're able to make data-driven decisions, match the right skills to each process, and eliminate redundancies. Some of the financial and efficiency benefits that they've realized is their vehicle loan cycle times were reduced by 50%. Their home equity loan funding time was reduced by 50%, and their average number of consumer loans per month has increased over 36%. And I'll get into, we actually have a really in-depth case study on how Elevations Credit Union did this and a little more of the details around that in our resource library, so I'll show you where to find that in just a couple of minutes. And then also, as a member, you have access to quantitative performance metrics. So much like we do the qualitative best practices side that I was just talking about when it comes to benchmarking, we'll also do the quantitative performance metrics, or the quantitative side of benchmarking. So as you'll see, we have 4 different types of assessments that we collect. One is rapid performance assessments. These are short, fast assessments. They really have a narrow focus, and it's easy to complete. The rapid performance assessment is very short in nature. It's easy to complete, and it's a great resource to utilize for critical decision making. We do have a full open standards benchmarking, which this is a much more detailed assessment. It's really meant to do a comprehensive deep dive into how an organization is performing compared to others. And it's really meant to help target some of their greatest process improvement opportunities. We also have capability assessments in both the knowledge management and the process area. Both leverage APQC's maturity models and expertise to help organizations understand, plan, and assess their knowledge and business processes and the steps needed to take their performance to a higher level. And then finally, we do research assessments that are conducted by our research services team during their research. So the process areas and topics will vary and are intended to address novel topics and up-to-the-minute research needs. These particular surveys are focused on specific research hypotheses, and the resulting reports demonstrate APQC's newest best practice research and findings. So during this overview, we'll focus on the rapid performance assessments and the open standards benchmarking assessments, because these are the 2 engines behind all of our performance metrics that you'll have access to through the APQC membership. So let me kind of back up a little bit and tell you the process of how we are collecting both the rapid performance assessment and the open standards assessments. So APQC has probably right at 30 different process performance assessments. So these assessments span kind of your cross-industry operational process areas. So what I mean by that is we've got several assessments that are designed to measure the financial management process, like an accounts payable assessment, an accounts receivable assessment, a payroll assessment. We've got several assessments designed to measure the human capital management area. We've got Related to supply chain management, we have like a procurement, a supply chain planning, a logistics. We've got an IT assessment, so such and so forth. So how the assessments work. Let's say an organization wants to benchmark their accounts payable area. They could take one of our accounts payable assessments, either level, whether it's the high level rapid performance assessment or the deeper full comprehensive assessment. Again, the rapid performance assessment is going to be more high level. It's short, fast, easy to take. The detailed comprehensive assessment is really meant to do a deep dive into that performance, into how an organization is performing. And it's really there to help organizations identify where their larger performance gaps lie, or maybe where they want to focus some more process improvement initiatives on. But whatever the case, they would take one of the assessments, turn it into us. We do put it through an extensive validation process, and then we give them a report back that's going to show how their organization is performing first compared to everyone in our global database that's completed that assessment. And then also how they're performing compared to their revenue peer group, their regional peer group, and their industry peer group. And when we get onto the site, I'll show you an example of the type of report that you would get back. But yeah, it's a great neutral resource to utilize for organizations to utilize if they are wanting an unbiased, again, neutral resource to help them identify where some of their larger performance gaps are, or where they may want to focus some process improvement initiatives on. So what this means for our members is our members are able to access all of this performance metrics that we do, all of these quantitative data or performance metrics, either by taking one of our assessments that is part of the membership benefits, or they can actually go into what we call our Benchmarks on Demand portal and in real time have access to all of these performance metrics. And again, I'll show on the site where to get it. Now, Mosaic is one of our newest member benefits that we rolled out in 2016 to really help organizations take our process classification framework and adapt it to fit their own organizational needs. It is a cloud-based resource, and organizations can go in, upload the process classification framework, and maybe they want to use a combination of like the cross-industry framework and an industry-specific framework. Or maybe they just want to take the framework and really start to apply some ordering schematics and really kind of get down into more of the weeds and look at how they want to work, or how the organization wants to work and start standardizing some of those processes. They can upload their own process assets and tie it to a particular process element, all within Mosaic. Now, we do have a separate recorded demo of Mosaic. So I won't be getting into, just for timing purposes, I won't be getting into a Mosaic demo today, but if you're interested, just let us know and we're happy to point you to where that recorded demo is or get it to you directly via email. And then also with the APQC membership, you do have a peer-to-peer search capabilities that organizations can utilize to connect with other member organizations. So for example, say you did read a case study from one of our members and you want to find out more details about that, then you're able to go into our site and search for individuals within that member organization and connect with them. Now, their email address is blinded and they do need to agree to be listed in our online repository when they register for the site. But yeah, this is a great resource to utilize for APQC members to connect with each other and really network and share things that have worked for them. We do have a zero solicitation policy. I should mention that. And to our knowledge, we've never had a breach of that. And then APQC events. We do have 2 large conferences per year. Always in the April-May timeframe, we have our Knowledge Management Conference. And then in the fall timeframe, typically October, we have a Process and Performance Management Conference. Each of the conferences are structured pretty similarly. similarly, of course, with each respective focusing on either the knowledge management or the process and performance management. The conferences themselves are structured in that we bring together practitioners, subject matter experts, and do breakout sessions. We have keynote speakers, and then we do provide plenty of time for networking with your peers and building your own network. In fact, our conferences may be a little different than some of the conferences you've attended in the past in that they're not vendor-driven conferences. So what I mean by that is we don't have a large expo floor that we invite outside vendors to come and showcase their products or technology. We do have one conference sponsor, but outside of that, we really utilize that time to, again, have networking sessions that the attendees can connect with each other and share what's worked for them, maybe have some deeper discussions around either the knowledge management or the process topics. And then we also have monthly and quarterly webinars and community calls based on our core areas of research as well. So with that, I will go into the APQC site, and we'll spend the remainder of the time just kind of looking at the research and how to access some of this research. So let me just stop the slide deck and then go onto our site. So when you first come onto the site, if you have not registered for the APQC site, then you'll need to do so just by going very self-explanatory to this register button. In fact, I think the majority of what you'll see is going to be pretty self-explanatory once you start to get into the resource library, but it is helpful to kind of be pointed out, to kind of have some things pointed out about where to find what. So yeah, the first thing I would say is make sure you register using your work email address. That is very important because, again, that's how we're going to tie you to your organization. And if your organization is an APQC member, you're going to be given member access. So that's very important. If you register using a personal email address like a Gmail or whatever the case may be, then you're not going to be given member access. So it's very important to utilize your work email address. And I'm emphasizing that because invariably we'll have 3 or 4 people today that will register using a personal email address and not understand why they're not being linked to their organization's account. So yeah, what you're looking at right now is the profile page. So this is where you can come, and of course, if you need to change any of your information, you can come to the member profile page. And we also have upcoming events. You can link to some of the content that you've recently downloaded and flagged. And you can also, if you are working on any benchmarking reports, you can see that. We do have a member resource page right from your profile as well that you will can get to give you a little bit of details about your membership and how to start utilizing that. Also from your profile, this is where you will need to go to make sure that if you want to take advantage of the peer-to-peer network, you'll need to go to your Edit tab, scroll all the way down to the bottom, and make sure that it's checked that you want to be peer searchable. If you don't want to show up in that portal, then make sure it's unchecked. So yeah, that is the your profile. Now, navigating the site, I will start with just going to this menu tab. The menu tab, one of the things that I do think is very helpful to go to is this expertise page. So each of our 5 core areas of research that I had mentioned earlier, the process and performance management, the knowledge management, each of these areas have an expertise page. So you can go to the expertise page and find additional details around what are some of the most recent research, what is our research services team wanting to focus in that particular area, what some of the upcoming research that they're focused on, all under the expertise page. So I do suggest coming to these pages maybe once a quarter or once a month and just seeing what's the latest and greatest in either the process, the knowledge management, financial management, human capital management, or supply chain. Also, I want to point out this events page. So you can come here and get additional details on our knowledge management conference, our process and performance conference, and you can also go to these on-demand webinars where if you get an email alert about a webinar you want to attend, but maybe it's not in a good time zone for you, or if you're in a meeting at that day, you can always come back and view that webinar at a later date. So we do have all of our 2019 and we will have all of our 2020 webinars captured in this on-demand webinar site, so you can come back and view it at a later date. You can also just click on the events tab itself, and you can look at our upcoming webinar calendar. So you can see the webinars that we have coming up in February, March, and whatever the case may be. So yeah, with that, let's get into the resources. Most of what you'll find as far as accessing our content is going to be under these tools. Let's start with the resource library. Again, some searching through the resource library is going to be pretty self-explanatory, but I do think it's helpful to have things pointed out. So on the left-hand side, this is more of a browse type feature where you can browse content by specific content topics. So if you want to see, all right, what's some of the latest research, or what is the content that they have related to supply chain management, you can expand the supply chain management tab, and then you'll see first that content starts to populate in the center. And then you can also further refine your search. So if you just want to find content related to procurement, you can further research your search based on procurement. So now we've got content populating that's all related to procurement. So here is a collection of webinars. You can also go to presentations, data and measures. So these are each content blocks, and we can dive down a little bit deeper and actually get into the content itself. So this is a quantitative, one of our quantitative content pieces that's going to look at a particular measure. In this case, it's looking at the total cost to perform the process manage suppliers per process FTE. So you can get the benchmarking data, you can see how we're computing this measure, the key terms, and the measure scope. You'll also see here that this is in chart form, and I can start to play with some of the data in real time. So say I want to see the data for the distribution and transportation industry. Now I want to look at a revenue range. So you'll see the chart starts to change. Here you'll see how we're computing this measure, the key terms and definitions. The scope of the measure is related to the process classification framework. So yeah, this particular one again was one of our quantitative. Let's find a case study that we can look at. Actually, the Elevations Credit Union. Well, you know what? Let's just do this. Let's just search by case studies. So the topics, as you can see, you can expand the tab and search by topics. Now I want to search by the format that the content is delivered in. So this is going to be a case study that is focused on enabling flexible change management at a real estate organization. So I can download this content, and it's going to do a deeper dive into that. Previously, I had pulled the Elevations Credit Union case study from our website. So you can actually pull it as a member, you can pull this website and you can get a lot more details around what I was, the example I was using related to Elevations Credit Union's 5-year journey. So it starts out by really looking at them developing their enterprise process map, and taking you through their 5-year journey and how they made themselves successful. So this is a really deep content piece. One thing that I want to point out about this particular content piece, and it's good to actually know. So APQC, we take our content and it's constantly being reviewed to ensure that it is still relevant for today's business environment. Now, Anything that is 5 years or older, we actually put under, we title it a classic, and it's not going to come up in your initial search. There's a lot of times, and this is a perfect example, that even though this particular case study was written in 2014, it's still incredibly relevant for today's business environment. So I'm just going to click the box that includes classics, and this will pull up all of the content regardless of whether or not it's 5 years or older. So that's taking, you can see here, where we are able to download the Elevations Credit Union case study. So just furthering your search, you can see you can further it to industry, or again, the type of benchmarks that it has. Now going back to the resource library, and so this was all on the left is how to just really browse. You can also go into the resource library and you can do some more keyword searches. So one of the things, if you want to just search for process definitions, you can use Boolean phrases, quotations, all of your typical Google type search functionality. So this starts to populate content all related to process definitions. So let's just pull this content piece as an example. And this is an interactive tool. It's going to take just a second to download. Okay, well, we'll just go back. So, but this is a tool that you can utilize. You'll also see here at the bottom related resources. So this is where our research services team will curate some of the content for you. So this is similar to Amazon saying, you know, people that have searched for this also like, you know, search for this item, also like this item. So this is where they're curating some of the content for you. So they're basically saying if this is something that you were interested in, you may also find some of these content pieces interesting as well. So let's just look at this infographic. Again, the resource library, various forms, fast infographics, deep case studies, podcasts, things of that nature. So you can search for keyword phrases, Boolean phrases, maybe communities of practice. If your organization is using a lot of communities of practice, you can search for knowledge management. One of the types of content that we have that's very popular are called these blueprints for success. And these are around our major process areas. And the blueprints for success are foundational content around a topic. They pull together the process classification framework, scope, the definitions, the KPIs, business drivers and enablers, and case studies all around a common topic. So let's just pull this blueprint for success for procurement. And I'll just go into this real quick as an example. And then we'll move on to the quantitative. So you'll see this is a very in-depth content piece. It's 59 pages, but it's going to give you a lot of information. So you'll see first some glossary terms. You'll see the strategic view. It's going to pull in the scope of the process classification framework. It's going to give you some key strategies for this particular topic, some KPIs, and then we'll start to get into some case studies as well. So we're looking at all of the quantitative data at first, and then we're going to look at organizations that have we've done research on and have some really innovative or, again, thought-leading practices that have proven successful in the procurement area. So very deep content. Again, you can just do a search for blueprints for success and just search for the ones that may be of particular interest to you. So we'll just do a quick back. And then we also have another thing I want to point out. We also have these we call these essential toolkits. For example, we have ethics program essentials, essential inputs for HR strategy, knowledge management essentials. So these are all essential content pieces for the topic of knowledge management. So those are good collections to look at as well. So that's the resource library. Let's go to, I'm going to skip to assessments real quickly. Actually, before I do that, I'm going to pull up the process classification framework and just do a quick look at that. So if you're not familiar with the framework, I had mentioned before, it has these 13 high-level process categories. So you can start with the high-level category, vision and strategy, and then it goes down from there. The framework itself will take each of these categories, and as you see on these tabs at the bottom, they'll take each of these high-level categories and break it down to the process group, the process, and then down to the activity level. So the benefit of this, say we are talking about the process, develop, production, and material strategy. We have a standard resource that we can all quickly agree the processes that make up the activities that make up this process are defined by this 4-level numerical activity structure. So we can very quickly and easily determine what's in scope when it comes to talking about this process, and what's also in scope when it comes to benchmarking the process. You'll also see we have a glossary of terms, and we have all of our performance metrics that we collect that relate to the framework, or we have the measures. You can actually pull the metrics in the resource library. So yeah, going back to the assessments. So I had mentioned we have assessments in kind of your cross-industry operational process areas. So we've got multiple assessments that are designed to measure the financial management, knowledge management, supply chain management, human capital management. So these are the areas that we have assessments in. If you click on each of those high-level assessments or high-level topics, you'll see you can get to the individual assessments. So let's just use accounts payable as an example. Again, remember there's 2 different levels. There's a high-level, short, fast assessment, and there's a really extensive deep dive assessment as well. So let's pull. Okay, so this is the accounts payable full open standards benchmarking assessment. You'll see the assessment itself. This is the actual assessment that you can download from our site. You just click on the download the assessment. It's going to take you to some terms, instructions. This is where you'll complete the actual assessment. It'll ask for some background information. It does give you a glossary of terms. In the assessment itself, it gives you a link to the process classification framework, and you'll see the performance measures that this particular assessment collects. You can see here they're broken into cost effectiveness, cycle time, process efficiency, and staff productivity measures. And then we do have, of course, supplemental measures related to each particular assessment. So if you were to take this assessment, the type of report you would get back, it's going to show you a high level. First, it'll give you a tab with a high level executive summary that you can quickly share with your exec team, maybe at a meeting or via email. It'll give you a tab where you see the scope and demographics of this particular assessment. And this is how the assessment is reported out, or the data is reported out. In column B, you'll have each one of the measures individually listed out. So each one of these measures that it collects will individually be listed here. Then you have your organization's value. First, you're going to see how you're performing compared to everyone in the global database. You'll see the sample size, the 25th, the median, and the 75th percentile. So these are all reported in quartiles. You'll see your performance gap and where your organization falls percentile-wise. And next, you'll also see how you're performing compared to your industry peer group. You're going to get the same sample size, or you'll see the same report out for the sample size. Bottom, median, and top performers are, again, this will be bottom quartile, median quartile, and 75th quartile. Gap in performance. You'll see how you're performing compared to your revenue peer group. If it makes sense, you'll get a bonus peer group, which would be the number of transactions performed. That's not going to make sense for each of our assessments, but where it does. And then your regional peer group. So the regional we break out is North and South America, EMEA, and Asia Pacific. So yeah, the assessments you can take, you have APQC members have the ability to take at no cost. That's part of the membership. Non-members are able to participate in our assessments and there's just a $5,000 fee per assessment. A couple of questions I get about these assessments is, one, a lot around data confidentiality. What organizations am I being performed to? Or am I being compared to? So APQC has very stringent data confidentiality policies in place. We never associate an organization's name with their data. We do have a representative list of organizations that have completed one or more of our assessments, and that list goes on something like 75, 80 pages long. But we would never say which assessment that organization has completed. So for example, if it's organization ABC, it may appear on the list of organizations that's completed our assessment at one point in time or another, but it's not going to say they've completed a financial management assessment. And we also have a lot of organizations that prefer we leave them off that list altogether, and we're happy to do that as well. So yeah, very stringent data confidentiality policies in place. I also get asked how often we refresh our data. So this data is constantly being refreshed. We actually update our database nightly, so every 24 hours. As soon as we get an assessment in, once it passes the validation process, again, the validation process is both statistical and logical. Once it passes that process, that data goes into our database nightly. So we are constantly refreshing and updating our data. So yeah, that's the assessment. Now again, organizations are able to, if they're not at a point where they want to take one of those assessments, they can actually go into our Benchmarks on Demand portal and have access to all of these performance metrics as well. So let's see, I've used both finance and accounting and supply chain a lot. Let's look at some human capital management. Let's maybe do training and development. So this is what we're pulling up right now are all metrics related to employee training and development. You'll see it's defaulting to where it includes all of the cycle time, staff productivity, cost effectiveness, and process efficiency, as well as the supplemental. So say I really just want to look at some cost effectiveness measures. I can deselect the others, and I'm just going to randomly select a couple. And then now I want to pull in some staff productivity measures as well. I'll select that, and I want to now look at maybe one process efficiency measure. So what I've done is just selected the measures I want to look at. You can go up and view the measures. And I can also go to now I just want to select my peer groups. So let's I don't know, maybe aerospace. And let's use maybe the EMEA region, and let's do a revenue range of 1 to 5 billion. So what I've done now is I've selected the peer groups that I want to look at, and I'm going to generate the report. So this is going to pull validated performance metrics. So you can either view it at your screen, so you'll see the individual measures that I chose to look at. If I click on the measure itself, it's going to give me the measure description. I can also go to the details, and this is going to link me back to the resource library. back to the quantitative part of the resource library, where I can get additional details. I can get how this measure is being computed. I can get key terms related to this measure and the process classification framework scope. It's also showing me the data in chart form. So say now I want to look at the distribution and transportation, or I want to look at healthcare. So you can really interact with the data a lot. So now I'm going to go back. I'm just going to hit the back browser, and it's going to go back to the actual data. So I'm still on where the benchmarks on demand report, and you'll see the overall database. You'll see the 25th median and 75th percentile, the sample size. I wanted to look at the aerospace industry. I wanted to look at the EMEA region, and I wanted to look at 1 to 5 billion revenue range. I can also export this report to Excel. So if I wanted to share this data within the organization, I can export it to Excel, and it's going to populate a report that I can share within the organization. It's going to give some background terms, and then these are the measures. So for each of the measures, first we've got the aerospace industry, then we've got the data, the overall database, and the data. Again, you're going to get the same, you'll see the sample sizes, 25th median and 75th percentile, the quartiles. Then I wanted to look at the revenue range and the EMEA. So now say I want to edit the peer group. I want to look at different peer groups. I can also edit the peer groups from the same screen, and I can also edit the measures. I can also come up and edit the name of this. And the reason I may want to do this is say I want to rerun this report at a later date. Maybe I want to run it quarterly or annually. I can come to this tab and show all of the saved reports that I've done. And then I can run one of these reports out. I'm just choosing a random report, but what this is doing is pulling the report with the same measures that I chose to look at, but it's pulling with updated performance metrics. So yeah, that's the Benchmarks on Demand portal. Mosaic, this is where you would get into Mosaic. Again, due to time constraints, we're not going to go into Mosaic as far as an in-depth demo. I do think it's would be well worth your time to at least go onto the Mosaic tab and learn about Mosaic, what it is, why it exists. And again, if you're interested in the full demo, just let us know, and we're happy to either point you to where that is or send you the link directly. You can see APQC's research agenda. So if you want to see the type of research that our research services team is currently working on or has recently completed, you can go into the research agenda. So recently completed research, you can see additional details by clicking on each of these links. You can also see the content that was developed as part of that research. And then you can also see their current and upcoming research for each as well. So just clicking on these two tabs. And we have this for each of our core research areas. The peer-to-peer portal, you would go to the peer-to-peer portal again if you want to connect with other APQC members, build your own network, things of that nature. This is where you would go to the peer-to-peer portal. And then finally, I do want to point out the APQC blog. So each of our core areas of research, we have APQC blogs that are current and up to date. And the good thing, I think the interesting thing about the blogs is this is where our research services team can really input some of their own insights. Whereas the research, you know, they're just reporting and creating content based on the actual research. With the blog, you can really get to get a little more of their research and a little more of their experience that they have gained constantly going out and researching and connecting with the organization. So I do think the blog is a valuable tool for both members and non-members to access. So yeah, that's pretty much all that I had as far as resources. We'll go back to the slide deck. and we'll just kind of start to wrap things up from here. So just to recap, with your APQC, for APQC members, do have comprehensive access. Actually, I don't think I mentioned that. The APQC membership is available to all members within a member organization, or excuse me, all employees within a member organization. So once an organization joins, we don't limit the member to a set number of users or things of that nature. The membership is available to be used throughout the membership or throughout the organization by any employee that is interested in utilizing the membership and accessing the content and metrics and best practice tools. You do have access to best practice resources, qualitative best practices, really targeted actionable best practices, benchmarks and metrics, Ask Us portal. This is where you can go on. Actually, I don't think I pointed that out as well. The Ask Us, and I'll do that real quickly because it is important. In the resource library, you can go into the resource library and you can actually go to this Ask Us feature and say, you know what? I'm new to knowledge management, and I really would like you to bring me to some of the top content that you feel would be helpful if I'm just starting on this knowledge management journey. We're just implementing it. Or maybe you need to say, I need to really get my organization and my leadership on board for some of this process improvement journey that I want to take. What content would you suggest? But whatever the case may be, I'm working on a finance transformation, and I need content that will help in that. I want content related to end-to-end processes, whatever the, again, case may be. You can, if you can't find it in the resource library, you don't have time to search, just come to us and let us know what you're looking for or working on. And our research services team can search the resource library for you and come back with suggested content. So that is a really big feature that I neglected to point out. So I'm glad I had that slide to remind me. Comprehensive access for all employees. You get access to qualitative best practices, quantitative benchmarks and metrics, the Ask Us feature, webinars, and then always feel free to reach out to your APQC Member Success Manager. We're here to help you guys and ensure that that if you are an APQC member, you're really getting benefit and value from your APQC membership. If you're not a member, we still want you to get value from APQC's resources where you're able to. So always feel free to reach out to APQC, your APQC Member Success Manager. And then finally, we do have an advisory services team for organizations that would like a little bit more support than what is available with the membership. We have an advisory services team that can take all of this research and experience that we have from researching and working with organizations and really help organizations apply it. So it's a little bit different. Our advisory services is a little bit different than maybe a traditional consulting type engagement in that we don't do staff augmentation. So we're really not designed to come live with you for the next 6 to 7 months or send employees to set up shop with you, but we really work with organizations to kind of build their own internal competencies. And then I would say from there, again, if you have not done so, just make sure you've registered for the APQC members, the APQC resource library. If you're a member, you're going to be getting monthly content alerts and webinar announcements based on what you've told us that you're interested in, what your primary area of interest is. And then as a non-member, again, you can access the process classification framework. You can access all of our open source documents. So we do have about maybe 5 to 10% of our research that we put as an open source document open source content, but that both our members and non-members are able to access. So with that, I am going to turn it over to Caitlin and see if any questions have come in that I may be able to answer.
Thank you so much, Brandy. Okay, the first question we have is, what kind of memberships are there and what's the cost associated with those?
So there's two different levels of membership. One is that is a great question. Let me stop and say that. So there's two different levels. One is a functional membership, and the second is an enterprise level membership. The functional membership options, you've got a supply. They correlate to each of our core areas of research. So you have a supply chain management functional membership, a human capital management, a financial management, and a knowledge management functional membership. The functional memberships will give the organization access to the best practice content, the assessments, and the performance metrics related to that one particular functional area. Again, it's still unlimited as far as the number of users that can access the content. And then the second level of membership is related to, is called our enterprise-wide level membership. And that allows the organization access to all of our content, metrics, and assessments, regardless of functional area. So that's our most comprehensive. So yeah, and for definitely, I would say, let us know. I think there's a questionnaire at the end of this slide. If you would like additional information about the membership, just let us know, and we're happy to reach out to you and answer any additional questions you have regarding what's covered under what, or, you know, again, what any additional questions regarding the membership.
Thank you so much, Brandy. The next question we have is, do we have any conferences?
Yes, we have 2 large conferences per year. We'll go on to I'm going to end the slide deck and show you where you can find additional details on our website. So we have a knowledge management conference that's coming up in April, the last week of April, first week of May. If you go to these events, you can see details about our knowledge management conference as well as our process conference. So yeah, we have a knowledge management conference coming up end of April. And then we also have a process and performance management conference that is coming up in October 5th and 9th. Our conferences, again, our knowledge management conference, we typically have right at the 375, maybe 400 375 to 400 attendees. It's a good sized conference. It's right at that sweet spot where you see a lot of the same faces over and over, so that makes it a little bit easier and less intimidating to connect with some of your peers and practitioners and subject matter experts. But it's large enough to keep interest and make it a large conference, large enough conference to make it worth your while. Same with the process conference. We have the process conference, the knowledge management conference, we are our 21st conference this year. And then the process conference is, we have not been doing quite as long, but we still have a great audience for the process conference. I think in that level, we're right at maybe 275, 300 attendees. So yeah. Any additional questions, Caitlin?
And thank you so much again, Brandy. But I think the last question we'll have time for is, how do I find out if my company's already a member?
Okay, also a great question. I would say the easiest way to find out is just contact us and we'll let you know. We do have a list of members. So you can go to current members on our site. Again, let me show you how I got here. I went to the menu tab, membership. I kind of hovered over membership and went to current members. So once you get to the current members, you can search for your organization, or you can look in this manner. You can also search by industry. The only problem with looking here is sometimes, as I had mentioned, we have organizations that ask to completely be left off any marketing list, so any member list or whatever the case may be, and we're completely fine abiding by that. So, there is a small chance that your organization may be a member and not be listed here. So if your organization is one that does not want their name to appear anywhere, then we wouldn't know. So you can always just reach out to us and we'll be able to tell you with 100% clarity. I would say this is going to give you 98% clarity, and the reaching out to us will give you 100% clarity. So yeah, I'm looking at the time and it looks like we're right at the hour. So I definitely thank you guys for your time. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us. We're going to get your questions answered. And again, if you're a member or a future member, then our main job is to ensure that you have access to the resources that will allow you to perform efficiently, share knowledge easily, connect with peers, all of that good stuff. Caitlin, anything from your end?
That's it. Thank you so much, Brandy.
Okay, thanks guys. Have a great day. Bye-bye.